welcome to United Church Online. We're glad that you've joined us today.
If you are new to United Church, we'd love to stay in touch with you. So why don't you fill out the Connect card in the description or visit our website for more information.
Get your Bibles, notebooks, and pens ready, and let's receive the word together.
As we kick off a new series, we're kicking off a series entitled Family Time. And this is something I really believe will help and assist us in building strong families, because it's evident, obviously we know that communities are made up of families. Families are made up of individuals, and so if each one of us can play our role in building and doing what God requires of us, we build stronger families and in turn build stronger communities. And so I think it's very fitting that, this partnership with Emmanuel today, Church School Sunday, all of us can be helped and encouraged together. And so let me first preface this by saying I don't speak as an expert. I don't have it all together. You can ask my wife. She will very quickly testify that all families have their own challenges, unique challenges, right? There's no perfect family. There's no family that has it all together. There's no parent that can say, you know what, I've won, I've done it, I'm perfect. We're all on a journey together. We all have room for improvement, and we can all help each other get to where we want to be. And so this doesn't just apply to specific people. I think this applies to all of us. And so let me encourage you, just take what's needed this morning, whatever applies to you, put it into practice and see how God can be faithful to you and your family. Let me encourage you, maybe here's something to do. Depending on where you're at, whether you're a mom or dad, husband, wife, child, aunt, uncle, whatever your role is in the family, maybe just walk away with this question: what does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? I know when we hear things about family and husbands and wives and parents and kids, you are tempted to look over at your spouse and be like, I hope you're listening. Have you ever had that moment where the pastor says something and you're like, but instead of doing that, maybe ask yourself the question, what does this mean for me? How can I apply this? How can I put this into practice and see God's faithfulness in my family? The framework for this is rooted in Ephesians chapter 5, where Paul writes to the church, and he writes specifically about families, and he kicks it off with this. He says, furthermore, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. What does mutual submission look like within our families? What does it look like? Should we submit to one another? Not just expecting one partner to submit more, but when there is mutual submission, when there's submission within the context of our homes, I really believe it'll help us. And so today's message is meant to be very practical. And the title of the message is, It's About Time, because it is about time. Firstly, we haven't had a family series in many years, but also we are speaking about time and how we manage and navigate time with our families. And so, you see what I did there? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, if your family were to be asked what one thing they want from you more than anything else, maybe just think about whatever role you play in your family. If your family were to be asked, what one thing do they need or want from you more than anything else? What do you think the answer would be? Just think about that for a second. If I were to ask your spouse, what one thing do you require from your partner, from your spouse, from your husband or from your wife, more than anything else, what do you think their answer would be? I can imagine you would already anticipate that my wife would just want a longer holiday, more times a year, or, thank you, yeah. Or maybe it'd be like, my partner would definitely want more money. Or he'd want more money. Maybe a new car. Can you just please, my angel, just get me a new set of wheels that you don't drive and leave on empty for me to fill up, I don't know if we all have those issues or if I'm just speaking about my own house. Maybe you'd say, I just want them to listen to me more. I just want them to hear what I have to say without being, I know, I get it. All of us would have different answers. But here's one thing I can guarantee, and I don't know everything, and I don't know everyone, but if the one thing that I know, because we are all human beings, the one thing that it all boils down to, if we were to ask our families what one thing they need from us, regardless of what their answer might be, at the bottom of it all, it would look like this. The one thing our family wants from you and I is to feel like we are their priority. Whatever the answer is they give, at the root of it would essentially be, I just want to know that I am your priority, in whatever way, shape, or form that is expressed. It might be expressed differently. Your children might be like, Daddy, I just want to play Xbox with you all day, or PS5 with you all day, or whatever that looks like. But at the bottom of it all, what they're saying is, I want to know that I am your priority. And maybe if they were to answer it differently, it might be things like, hey, if we could go out for dinner together one night a week, that would be great. Or if we can have some uninterrupted family time in the evenings or whatever that looks like, that would be great. Or maybe if you were to say no to one or two extracurricular activities and just spend a bit of time with the family, that would be great. Whatever that looks like, at the bottom of it all, what they are trying to say, or what they would probably be saying, is, I just want to know that we are your priority. I just want to know that you have made room for us in your world. How many people or how many families have had these discussions where it's simply at the bottom or at the root of it all, where it's about time? It's about more time with one another. It's about more time with the family, more commitment, more effort with and in our families. Why is that an issue? Because something is always fighting for our attention. Something is always competing for our time and attention. There's always something that wants to draw us away from family and priority. There's always something that is competing for our attention. Every time you and I say yes to something, we are inadvertently saying no to something else. And so it's so important for you and I, because if we aren't intentional with this, we find ourselves in a position where a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later, we look back and our families look different, and they are not in the position of priority, and we have slowly drifted off. And we have these conversations, what happened? And we ask ourselves things like this: how did we get here? What went wrong? How can we do better? How can we fix this? Rather than playing repair, we can be intentional on the front end and make our families know that they are indeed our priorities. They are indeed the people who we make time for, not leave leftover time for. They are the people that we carve time out and say, this is blocked out time for you to know that you are my priority. Not like, let's do everything else, and if there's time left, we'll see what happens. The first question I always ask people when people meet with me regarding family and marriage and all of that is like, when was the last time you had a date night? I love asking that question. And I love seeing people's responses, because that is one of the most sobering answers, when people are like, yeah, it was actually the other day before our last born was born. Your last born is 5. Yeah. It's been 5 years. And you realize, oh wow, how quickly can time pass before we realize, oh my goodness, it's been 5 years, 3 years, 2 years before we'd had an actual date night, just the two of us together. See, here's the reality when it comes to family. We are always stuck in this constant tension between being and doing. Between being and doing. Being who we need to be to one another, our spouse, a support, a partner, a parent, a father, a mother, whatever our household needs, we always need to be, but we also need to do. Right? All of us have jobs or careers or functions that we fulfill, and so we're stuck in this tension between being and doing. Even if you are, someone like a stay-at-home mom, there's always the tension of being and doing. I need to make sure things run smoothly, but I also need to be with my kids. Dads, I need to make sure that the family is provided for, but I also need to make sure that they know that I'm here, or they are my priority. There's always the tension between being and doing. And that's really the tension we always experience, because from the beginning, in the book of Genesis, when God ordained and set up the family, it says this in chapter 2:15, then the Lord God placed the man in the garden of Eden to cultivate it and guard it. Listen, work was there before family was. Right? That's something many people kind of get confused. Like, man, I wish I don't have to ever work again. Good luck with that. It's like we're wired for that, Work was there before Eve came along, right? And so there's something in us that was meant to cultivate, to create, to tend to, right? That's very much where we find a lot of our identity, right? And then, 3 verses later, in verse 18, then the Lord God said, it's not good for man to live alone. I will make a suitable companion. Not a suitable servant, not a suitable minion, a suitable companion. Someone who is beside, right? That can help me cultivate the ground or the land that God had given to me. And so this doing element and the being element will forever be a tension that we face. So many people live within this tension, and many times one takes precedence over the other. Either I enjoy being at the detriment of doing, or I enjoy doing at the detriment of being. But you and I need to find the tension where I can live in the middle between the being and the doing. I'm doing what I need to do to provide and supply and make sure we've got income and make sure we've got a home and a roof and food. I'm doing all of the things, but at the same time, I know when to be. I know when to switch off from the doing and move into being, where I can spend time uninterrupted, focused, present. How many of us wrestle with the concept of just being present? We're there, but we're not really there. I remember an argument. We don't have arguments. We have intense conversations. We had an intense conversation, my wife and I, and she said this to me. She says, "You're here, but you're not here." And my immediate defense was to put up my guard. I said, "Well, you know what I do for a living, you know. People are messaging me. I'm a pastor." She's like, yeah. You're here, but you're not here. And that was sobering for me, that yes, I'm home, but I'm not really home. I'm not emotionally present. Right? I'm physically present, but not emotionally there. And so we've had to make some adjustments. And we see that part of the fall of humanity by Genesis chapter 3 is that there would be this tension. Genesis 3:19, you will work hard and sweat to make the soil produce anything until you go back to soil from which you were formed. And so we see how this order was thrown out of whack that God initially intended. And so work and labor and cultivating kind of works at enmity with the being element of our humanity. And so that's a tension you and I need to restore with the help of God. And of course, there will be seasons when the tension is blown out. And it's important for you and I to maybe have these conversations, in fact, regularly have these conversations, because maybe there's a season where one of you in your family might say, "Hey, I think it's a season where I need to upskill myself, maybe do a course or study," or maybe one of you says, "Hey, it's finally time to start a business," and that might mean that, it's going to take me away from home. Whatever that looks like, as long as we carefully navigate those seasons to know that we need to pivot where necessary. Right? We just say, okay, this is maybe a year, 2 years where one of us is just going to go in a slightly different direction, which means we might need to adjust our expectations so that we don't sit with misaligned expectations. In the beginning you said you'd love me and you'd always be there. Yeah, but we're starting a business together. We said we'd do that. Yeah, but you're not there. Okay, I'm sorry. And so here's the one element that I'd like to just clarify when this happens. Communicate with clarity regularly. Communicate with clarity regularly. Don't assume that your family always knows what's going on in your head without expressing it. Don't assume that, they understand, she understands, he understands, he knows what I need to do, she knows what I need to do, she knows this is a part of my job, he knows this is what I do for work. Communicate it with clarity regularly. Hey, you know what? It's going to be a busy month. I've got a couple of meetings. Hey, you know what? I need to travel. Hey, work is requiring a bit more of me. Hey, it's month end, whatever that looks like. Communicate with clarity so that we don't assume our families know. They know they're my priority, man. When I see them, I'll see them. No, if we communicate regularly, it helps us take away the misaligned expectations, and we can then build together because we're on the same page. That really does help make our families work. I remember one of the books I read regarding family many years ago was a book called When Work and Family Collide. There was a season where I struggled with this. We led the church, and I was a wedding photographer at the same time. And so on weekends, I would be out shooting weddings and making memories for families, and then on Sunday come and preach. And so all of that meant that any free time I had was devoted to editing wedding pictures and seeing clients and all of that. And I remember just feeling like this was taking too much from my family, and Sean and I had so many conversations, and I remember reading this book just as a way to navigate and help. And the author, Andy Stanley, speaks about this tension that we face and what happens when any of us put more emphasis on one element than the other. And I want to illustrate this, because here's what happens. Assume that both of you kind of carry your load, right? And so a husband does what he needs to do in the home, and a wife does what she needs to do in the home. Or maybe your family looks a bit different, or maybe you're a single mom, or whatever that looks like. But however, we all carry our given load. Some people prefer, this is what I do. I make sure this is done, and that's done. And the other person ensures that that's done, and they all play their role, and they carry their weight, and everything works well. However, Anytime something comes up, anytime, someone is left doing something more, what ends up happening is there's a transfer of weight. And so it's like, hey, you know what, I need to leave for work. Would you ensure that the kids are taken care of and everything is done? And the other spouse is like, you know what, I've got this. And again, later on, something else comes up and says, hey, you know what, I need to leave. I'm going on a trip or whatever. Would you please make sure everything is sorted? And so there's a transfer of weight, right? And again, something else comes up and I need to tend to it. It's a last minute work call. It's a last minute meeting. It's all good. But here's what happens. The more we transfer weight, the longer the other spouse is left carrying that weight. Right? So, which is not an issue. This is what we signed up for when we said yes to one another. It's like, hey, I will help when I need to, and you will help when you need to. However, what we don't realize is that part of humanity means that if there isn't a constant transferring, one person ends up carrying the weight for a little bit longer than they should. And because we might have the willingness, but not the capacity, right? We've got the willingness. I will help you, do what you need to do. I'm here for you. But eventually, carrying this for a little while, it becomes a bit heavy. So, hang on, man, I'm carrying this a little bit longer than I thought I would. And eventually what happens is, finally, when my capacity is depleted, I've got the willingness, I love you, I want to make sure that I'm here and I want to help, but when my capacity is depleted, eventually I have to put that down and just breathe. And for many people, unfortunately, they don't just put it down, everything just falls. And the other person comes and like, I thought we were on the same page. I thought you said you were going to help. I thought we had this locked down. I thought we were good. And the other person says, I was, but I just didn't have the capacity to continue. I didn't have the capacity. I had the willingness. I wanted to help. I wanted to take the weight off your shoulders. I just didn't have the capacity. And what this looks like from the outside is finally when someone breaks or when someone snaps or when things fall apart, everyone stands from the outside looking and it's like, man, it just happened so suddenly. What went wrong? They looked so happy. They looked like they had it all together. And yes, it did look like that, but the weight was misaligned. And so what we need to ensure, if we are going to build strong and healthy families, that we constantly are communicating with clarity and we know that, okay, you've been carrying the weight for a while. Let me just take a few things off your shoulders just to ease the weight, just so you can catch your breath, so that when my duties are back and I need to travel again, I can transfer the weight again just for a little bit. You can carry it, and when I'm back, I ensure that I remove the weight again. That's how we serve one another in families. This doesn't just apply to husband and wives, this applies to parents and children as well. I think if we have this framework within family, we can help each other thrive rather than expecting more from one another without contributing in return. And so maybe, and this is something that has helped Shani and I so much, is when we have our intense conversations, that the framework that we use is just, hey, my buckets are a bit full at the moment. I've been carrying a bit of weight and I've been taking a bit of strain. And immediately I know what that means. I don't have to justify myself. I don't have to, but. I know immediately what she means, that, hey, she's been carrying a weight and I haven't alleviated that in a while. And so then I know it's a season to step in, alleviate a bit of weight, let her breathe, and she does the same for me. And we can serve one another in that way. Maybe for many people, this is a way of framing the tension of being and doing. So if we're always busy doing and we never make the time to be, the other person or the other people in our family are always carrying a bigger weight. And one day when the bucket crashes and it looks like they don't want to, we need to understand it was simply the end of their capacity. I've got willingness, I love you, I'll do anything for you. However, I just didn't have the capacity, right? Think of it for an example like, let me use gym language for those of you who enjoy that. Exercise, you don't just jump into the heaviest weights. You slowly increase your capacity, right? You don't just run a 10K, you start by running 1, and then 2, and then 3. So when you and I don't learn how to enlarge our capacity, we expect people to carry too much too soon, and it breaks them, right? And so it's so important. Let me illustrate this with a biblical narrative that just helps frame it. So Luke chapter 10, these two sisters, Mary and Martha, come before Jesus, and they're busy, preparing everything, and there's the hospitality and all of that. And it says this in chapter 10. It says, now, while they were on their way, Jesus entered the village called Bethany, and a woman named Martha welcomed him to her home. She had a sister named Mary who seated herself at the Lord's feet and was continually listening to his teaching. But Martha was very busy and distracted with all of her serving responsibilities. Any families like that when we have guests, there's the one person who's just chatting away like nothing needs to be done, and there's the other person just in the kitchen and in the lounge and just serving, and the other one's just like, no, yeah, tell me that story again, carry on, and it's just like, are you going to help, We all have those people. Don't put up your hand if that's you. And she approached him and said, Lord, is it of no concern to you that my sister has left me with all the serving alone? I think she did the right thing. She's like, Jesus, can you just talk to my sister, please? It's like if that were your home, Jesus, talk to my husband. Thank you. I love how Jesus responds. Tell her to help me, she said. But Jesus replies, Martha, Martha, you're worried and bothered about and anxious about many things, but only one thing is necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, that which is to her advantage, which will not be taken away from her. You know what I love about Jesus is he doesn't affirm Martha's busyness. He encourages her to be mindful of this being an opportunity to be. Oftentimes, you and I get so caught up in the busyness and what needs to be done that we don't take the time to lift our head and say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to be and not just to do. How can I be in this moment? For one sister, she got that right. I know Jesus isn't always here. He's not always around. He's visited our town. This is an opportunity for me to be. The other one is like, okay, I know Jesus is here, but things still need to get done. This house needs to be tidy, food needs to be served, things need to happen. Some of you, like your kids are just like, Dad, do I have to right now? You have to now. Guests are coming in 5 minutes. I think it's so important for you and I. It sounds like some of you. I think it's so important for you and I to take stock and evaluate, to step back, look at the state of our families and evaluate and say, hey, have we maybe been doing so much at the expense of being? Or have we tried to be at the expense of doing that there's no productivity? Or where have we found the balance to be and do and live in that tension? So before I wrap up, let me give you 4 guiding questions that I believe if we just consider these, it's not anything for you to do, it's just some stuff for you to consider. Take it home, think about it, maybe have some discussions, and it might just help us move forward in building healthier families. Number 1, what one thing can I do regularly to make my family feel like they are my priority? Not just for them to know mentally, but for them to feel, for them to experience that they are indeed my priority. What one thing can I do, not once off, not once in 2 years, regularly, to make my family feel like they are my priority? What one thing can I do often? If it's set aside, blocked away time to spend time with them, if it's a surprise every once in a while, depending on your spouse's love language, if it's gifts, you might need to budget for that one. But depending on what it is, what one thing can I do to make my family feel? And this is a good question for all of us in the family, not just husbands, wives, parents, daughters, sons, whatever your role is. What one thing can I do to make my family feel like they are my priority, for them to feel like they are first in my world, for them to feel like I honor and serve them, for them to feel it, not just mentally know it, yeah, we know Dad loves us, but for them to feel like, man, Dad really loves us. Mom really loves us. Look at what they did for us. Just bear that in the back of your mind. Number 2, what is the current state of our family's buckets? What is the current state of our family's buckets? Maybe this is a good question for everyone to ask. Maybe have a dinner one night and say, hey, how are your buckets? Have you been carrying a load for a bit too long where you are on the brink of breaking down? Have you been carrying something that maybe wasn't yours to carry? Maybe I abdicated a responsibility to you and you picked it up out of the goodness of your heart, but now you've sat with it longer than you should have. Maybe it's about time we do a bit of an exchange, and I'll take some stuff off your plate, or you take some stuff off my plate, just for us to balance the weight, for us to serve each other well. See, many people don't do this. And so at the end of the day, when someone has reached the end of their capacity, that's when someone like me gets involved, and people call and say, hey, Pastor Andy, we need to chat. We can't be together anymore, and this is not working out, and our family is struggling, and this might be the end of the road. And all it is, it's just been an extended period of misaligned expectations and one person carrying a weight longer than they should have. And so before we get to repairing the situation, let's just take a bit of time and say, okay, let's evaluate this. Let's evaluate how our family is doing. How can I alleviate the weight for you? Just for the time being, maybe the next 2 months, 3 months, I'll take the weight off your shoulders. You can breathe a bit, and then we can reevaluate what this looks like going forward. So many families will be better off if we have these conversations more intentionally. Because for many people, because we don't evaluate this, we end up in a place where separation seems to be the only option. Divorce seems to be the only option. Maybe there are some things we can do ahead of time that might avoid that. Are you still okay this morning?
Yes.
When it comes to work, let's have the doing discussion. When it comes to work pressure, how much of the expectations that we are trying to live up to has been set by us versus others? Let's be honest and brutal for a second. For many of us, yes, we carry pressure. Yes, our roles come with certain expectations. But how much of the standards or the expectations that we are trying to live up to has been set by us? I'm the one that's an overachiever. I'm the one that needs to accomplish. I'm the one that needs to attain. I'm the one that needs to reach that goal. Also, society is very good at this, where they put this pressure on us, where it's like, hey, by the time you are 25, you should have a car and this. By the time you're 30, you need to have this, that, and that. And it's like, can we just relax? Jesus was 33. He still lives in his Father's house. It's been 2,000 years. Can we just relax? Don't put your weight on me, please. Just like, have you ever done, single people, if you've always got that aunt, and when you getting married? Shush. Leave me alone. Every year, December, I need to answer back, questions about when I'm meeting the one, and just relax. See, all of us have this pressure, this expectation on us, but sometimes we place that expectation on ourselves. We're the ones that decided, okay, I need to have this, I need to attain that, I need to have this by that date. Maybe we can reevaluate our families and say, hang on, that dream can just be pushed back a little bit. I'd rather get there together than get there by myself and leave my family behind. How many people have, for the sake of the dream or that expectation, achieved it at the detriment of family, at the detriment of those they love? Yes, I achieved it. I've built a business. I've built my empire. I've accomplished what I've wanted to. However, at the detriment of my family. And I've got no one to celebrate with. And so maybe it's an opportunity for you and I to reassess our expectations. If the work expectations or the work conversations is placed there by you, yes, there are weights we need to carry. That's what it is. However, sometimes you and I can look and say, hey, I've put this on myself. Maybe I can ease off. Maybe I can back down a bit. It might take me longer, but I want to get there in a healthy manner. Number 4, have we ever entertained the thought that our families are an interference or a hindrance to our goals? How many people have had this thought? You want to accomplish something, you want to achieve something, you want to get to where you want to be, and for some reason you've bought the lie that I would have gotten there faster if it weren't for these bloody brats. They make me so broke. I would have been rich. How many of us falsely believe that it's our spouse's fault or our family's fault that we aren't further in life? Like they are the ones taking more from us than we should have. Maybe that is a warped understanding of what family is and should be. Maybe if we see family through the lens that God does, and we realize that this is a blessing, not a curse. That God has given us a gift to keep us grounded, to keep us humble, to keep us focused on what's important. For many of us, we falsely believe that God's gift has become a burden. I've got a friend who happens to be a divorce attorney, and they have received an increasing amount of divorce requests. And I had a conversation with him just to help understand the framework behind so many people's decisions. And one of the things he said to me is, obviously when people apply for divorces, they have to write a reason. And he says many people have lost sight of what's important. And so part of their reasoning is just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be alone. I don't want to have this burden to carry. I don't want to carry this weight anymore. And just by that definition, it's evident that so many people have lost sight of what family, what marriage, what kids are meant to be. They're meant to be a gift from God, not a burden. They're meant to be something that we enjoy, something that keeps us grounded. It's so beautiful to have a place to come home to and simply just be. That home isn't the place where we try and escape from. Home is the place where we come back to, where we retreat to. And in a crazy world, in a crazy environment, a crazy space that puts all sorts of weight on us, home is the place that we can rest. Man, thank you, God, for my family. Thank you that I get to come home to a spouse or some kids. As crazy as they are at times, they take my mind off all the craziness happening out there. See, Jesus often reminded us of the balance of being and doing. Martha, Martha, you are worried about many things. You are anxious about many things. How many things are we worried and anxious about? But only one thing is necessary, and Mary has chosen the good part that will not be taken away from her. For many of us, our minds, our emotions, our efforts, and everything is scattered all over the place. But maybe if we can center ourselves around the words of Jesus, come back to the place where we can simply be in His presence, along with the ones we love, along with the people He's blessed us with. Could the anxieties and the stress and the pressure of life that we've chosen to live by, could these things be the things that are drawing us away from family and away from Jesus? Or could they become the things that steer us closer to family and closer to Jesus? Could we be so busy working for God that we eventually forget about the God of the work, the God who's blessed us with work, the God who's given us the ability to create wealth? See, the first step to you and I becoming healthier, stronger families is simply by becoming a healthier and stronger disciple of Jesus. To simply recognize that I've been given this life to live with Him, closer to Him, in His presence, and by me doing that, I become a better husband, a better father, a better partner, a better spouse. I become better in my family. And if each one of us in our families do this, if the kids, the young people, teenagers, spouses, moms, dads, if all of us do this, we become a stronger family. We become a better family. We each play our role, serving and loving one another with the capacity that Jesus gives. Not carrying the capacity in our own and crumbling under that weight, but with the capacity that Jesus gives us, with the strength that He gives. So as I wrap up this morning, I want to read you an invitation from Jesus. And I don't know where you're at with your family. I don't know where you're at as an individual. Maybe you don't have a family. Maybe you're single. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to prepare yourself and get this right now so that you're prepared for whatever the season is that lies ahead. But here's an invitation from Jesus that for many of us, this could apply in this season. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened. In other words, all of those of you who are carrying weights that you shouldn't be carrying, all of those of you who are extended beyond your capacity, all of those of you who are carrying stuff that you have placed that expectation upon yourself. Jesus says, hey, why don't you bring that to me? Because in your own strength, you won't be able to carry it. Come to me, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you. I have a very big burden, especially for husbands and fathers, because we live in a nation of fatherlessness. And so there's a lot of pressure on husbands and fathers and the weight of carrying and leading their families to the point where they carry it at their own detriment. And so husbands and dads aren't good at coming to Jesus and saying, hey, here's my weight. Rather, what we're really good at doing is adding more to our buckets because we feel like that's what's needed. If things are going rough, I'll just add another thing. I'll get a side hustle. I'll get something else to do to make more money. I'll do what I need to do, but I'll increase the weight rather than coming to Jesus and saying, hey, I can't carry this weight on my own. As a dad, I'm feeling the pressure. As a husband, I'm feeling the pressure. And so for that reason, we live in a country where the percentage of men who choose to take their own lives is significantly increased because we don't know what to do with the pressure. We'd rather carry it on our own at our detriment instead of yielding to the invitation of Jesus and saying, hey, come to me, bring that to me. If I'm the one who's created you, I can help you be better. Right? Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden that I give you is light. It's nothing like what society gives. Society will encourage you to do more. If you're not feeling it, do more. Get another thing, get another job, get another family. Trade your wife in for a younger model. Do like, what? That's not even proper advice. Just trust me, it worked. No. Society will lead you into all sorts of spaces and places that leave you yearning for more. Jesus is the only one that invites us and says, hey, bring all of that to me. Moms, bring your motherhood journey to me. Bring your family to me. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, who carry heavy burdens, I will give you rest. This morning, the invitation is to evaluate where you are at in your family journey, just as an individual, and ask yourself, what have I done with all the weight that I'm carrying? Have I been carrying it on my own, on myself, thinking that, just one mental health day a month is going to do it for me? Or can I bring it to Jesus and He can help me sustain it?
We believe that this message was helpful to you.
We'd love to stay in contact with you, so why don't you follow us on Instagram at United Church SA or contact us on our WhatsApp number.
Be blessed.